This is our special City Council meeting, June 20th, 2017. Jen, would you please take roll call?
Mr. Burr?
Here.
Mr. Cahill?
Here.
Ms. Kyle?
Here.
Mr. Skidmore?
Here.
Ms. Sudkamp?
I'm here.
Ms. Cahill?
Here.
Mr. Montgomery?
Here.
Ms. Skidmore?
Here.
Ms. Pitts?
Here.
Mr. Nicely? Here. Ms. Fetty?
Here.
Mr. Blankenship?
All right, we have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is the report of committees, Public Safety, Police. Mrs. Sudkamp, Mrs. Kyle.
Yes, sir. I believe the chief is going to handle most of this, and then we'll bring it up for a vote, see what everybody thinks.
All right.
If you don't mind, could I give you just a little bit of background about where we're at in this? Does that be okay?
Yes.
No, come up here, come up here, come up here. Yeah. But,
Sit down, Tony.
hey, Tony, you can sit down, it's all right. But just a little bit of background, okay? The sheet that I just gave you has been updated. This was a sheet that we did back in 2013 and took some assumptions in place about what the cost to Crescent Springs was at the time in 2008, when in fact we took over policing and where it's gone from that point until now. So I know Chief Wilson just received that also, so I wanted to give you that. For the last 6 months or so, we have been meeting with Crescent Springs. We have been discussing a extension to the contract. It expires June 30th of 2018. There are some clauses in there, and I'll let the attorneys speak about that, about termination of this agreement. Like I said, we've been about this last 6 months going back and forth and trying to renegotiate a new 5-year deal. In that deal, we did actually reduce our cost. As you'll see on the last page of that, the proposal that we have given them did reduce the cost by about $115,000 a year. Crescent Springs is now asking for an extension to that June 30th deadline to make it December 31st. The reason they're doing that has to do with the termination clause, I believe, that is in the contract and the addendum that they have given us to consider tonight to give them a 6-month extension. I believe that it's for to put out a 12-month instead of an 18-month notice. I'll let the attorneys talk about that because you can read into that termination clause a couple different ways. I know Mr. Wickman and I know Mr. Baker, who I don't see tonight, here, they wrote that back in 2013 when we first initiated this contract. So I just wanted to give you that background before Chief Wilson gives you his input on it and where we should go from here.
Yeah, let me just jump in, Mark, because I did have a conversation with Joe Baker. Okay. Just so everyone's on the same page with this, and Joe's pretty emphatic that his position on interpretation of that contract, and I agree with his interpretation of that contract, is that 18-month window was just for the first 54 months of that contract, that they are outside of that 18-month window right now anyway, and that they are in the period of time that they would have to give us 12 months notice. And his position is that all that addendum does is more or less kick the can down the road another 6 months, so we would be under contract with them for another 6 months, and then within that period of 6 months, they would have to give us 12 months notice of termination.
Okay.
But aren't you saying that at any time they can give us 12 months notice?
The actual contract expires June 30th, so if we do nothing, we're definitely out in 12 months.
I got you.
That's part of the confusion, Jack, and maybe you could expand on that a little bit, is what happens if the notice isn't given by June 30th by Crescent Springs? I know that the city of Erlanger can give them notice that we don't wish to pursue the contract any further, but if neither party gives notice within that 12-month window, where does it go from there at the end of the contract, and how would the terms be negotiated as far as payments and price?
And Joe and I worked through those scenarios because it's not necessarily contemplated within the confines of that contract. And, you know, Joe's position, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it, because we literally just had this conversation probably an hour ago, is that by not renewing the contract, they are giving us notice, and the 12 months would trigger on June 30th, and that payment for that 12-month period would be at the last amount that we had paid. That they had paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By giving no notice,
By giving us no notice of renewal, they, in essence, are giving us notice.
They're canceling the contract. Okay, so they're asking for 6 more months, a 6-month extension onto their existing contract.
Yes, sir.
Before they,
make up their mind whether or not they want to continue.
and if they decide somewhere between now and December that they don't want to continue, we still have 12 months from that point,
Yes.
from that notice.
Yeah, the problem with that is the amount of time that it takes for us to hire new people and retain employees. At this point, we are 4 to 5 people down. We have several in the academy. We have several on the bubble. We also are aware of 5 people retiring in the next 12 months. So in order for us, if we were to give Crescent Springs a 6-month extension, we would have to go ahead and hire 5 to 6 more people, which would put a burden on us, because the impression that we're getting from the Crescent Springs City Administrator and their mayor is that this is just an extension for them to get out of the contract regardless, because of the price differences that they've received, and they were going to open it up and put it out an RFP, which we've seen one of the prices that they've received from a competing agency, and it's one that we won't compete with because the numbers aren't realistic. So we've had a lot of meetings and discussions about it, and not for any reasons, excuse me, for any personal reasons or anything like that, we are under the feeling that we should not give this 6-month extension, because there's been plenty of time and plenty of talk behind the scenes. We negotiated price decreases in the past, and we don't feel that, you know, they've had plenty of time to make this decision, and there's been a lot of behind-the-door work that we weren't aware of, and it's not going to be fair to the city of Erlanger at this point to give this extension, because the time's been there and they've had plenty of time to do this. That's my staff's point of view right now.
I can certainly appreciate that. I mean, it sounds like we need to bring more people on regardless, whether, you know, to kind of get ready for the retirements.
Well, we were going to do that, but in order for us to police the city of Erlanger, we need between 36 and 38 officers. In order for us to police Erlanger and Crescent Springs, we need 42 to 44 officers. So we can't maintain those level of officers, and the position we don't want to be put into is having to lay people off because we feel that it's inevitable that they're going to cancel the contract. This is just extending the inevitable.
I mean, we still have to police them for another year.
Oh, yeah,
regardless.
and that's not a problem. We're still going to be able to do that, but we're not going to hire extra people, because the retirements that we're anticipating, 3 or 4 of them are in June of next year, which would be the end of the contract anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
I think you made the statement, we have trouble hiring policemen.
Yes.
We train them, another city gets them.
Yes.
Cincinnati. Just reading in the paper, sergeant over there made $300,000 last year. Now, he got his overtime with contractors. Can't compete with somebody like that.
Cincinnati's not a real competitor for us. We've been competing with other agencies in Northern Kentucky, but I don't know of anybody that we've lost to Cincinnati since I've been here.
It's hard to compare because the pension and the retirement system's all completely different too.
Yes.
Yeah, but $300,000 is pretty much it.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
But now they get this on the contracting. I think that on some jobs, they get $90 an hour.
Yeah, I
And
really
if we
can't.
Okay.
were competing with them, there's no way.
Well, that's true, but in my experience, we haven't had to compete with Cincinnati for officers or
But
losing.
even so, you have trouble getting the policeman to Early.
Yes,
It's a burden.
yes.
Do we really need to take on a burden of another city?
Well, I don't think at this time we do.
I mean, if we had ample of people, but that puts more on you because you've got to here and there.
It was easier when the original merge occurred back in '08 because we absorbed their personnel, and then we didn't have to go out and hire 6 or 8 additional officers, but now we have to do it.
You have to do it now.
Right now, we would.
So Chief, are you saying that regardless of Crescent Springs' decision, that we're saying we're not going to police them? Even
No,
if they,
because
even if
they're
they
gonna-
say that they want to renew the contract for another, whatever it might be, 5 years?
Well, they would have to do that before the end of this contract
that's
period.
what-
Yeah,
that's what I'm
I'm not
saying.
saying that we wouldn't put in an RFP when they do open it up. I'm not sure that we would or wouldn't. Like I said, the initial number that we saw that we don't feel is realistic, I don't feel that we could police our city for that amount of money.
Yeah, and I don't think they're expecting that they're going to get the same service, because else they would have taken it, you know? So
Yeah.
the fact that they're still looking or still thinking about it to me would say that they're not just making this decision on price alone.
I'm really not sure on that. 'Cause
Yeah,
I haven't-
I'm only guessing.
Speculating, I'm not sure.
Well, it's the recommendation of the committee not to do the extension.
Okay. Okay,
They've had plenty of time, and we have saved them so much money and given them outstanding service. And it's their citizens that are going to suffer for this.
So that's why it was put on the special meeting tonight, so that you could have a vote of whether or not we wanted to extend it.
Okay.
So that's why we put it on the agenda for the special meeting, for y'all to do so.
all right, so is that a motion?
It certainly is.
All right, we've got a motion, a second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just so I understand, the only person that would benefit with giving an extension would be Crescent Springs, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the thought is that it's
It would
just going
not
to give them.
benefit us at all, because we're not able to plan accordingly for our department.
Exactly.
And yeah, and what I'm hearing from the chief is that the timing of things, it just couldn't be worse timing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Tom?
So the question I have is I see what our cost would be, and our proposal is, what was Crescent Springs' proposal for the extension for, and are we looking at a year? 6 months, are we looking at another 5 year for us to recoup? What would be the?
The contract that we were trying to negotiate was going to be another 5-year contract, okay? They didn't come back with any other prices besides what we had proposed to that. The only other suggestion was that it remain the same, so that first price for the first year, which would be 2018, would remain that same through the 5 years of the contract. That's the only discussions that we've had about price with the new contract.
Okay.
Mr. Bodie and I sat down and looked at that and seen it, and you just can't keep it the same for 5 years. So that's why we put, I think it was a 2% increase into that for each year, which we thought was pretty fair down there.
Go ahead, Corey.
Now, 5% is what we base the other things on. Yeah, but if you look at our prices at the back, which what was proposed, I believe that's a 2% increase per year. Was that your question, Mr. Cahill?
Yes.
Yeah, was that,
Thank you.
okay.
Sure. You want to have a recess or a? Okay. Mr. Wickman's asking that we delay the vote until Mr. Gatlin and Mr. Wickman have a minute to speak on this. So we'll take, you want to go ahead and vote on the muni orders?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do we have anybody from Crescent Springs here?
Yeah.
Are you a resident or city council?
Did you want to comment?
Can they comment?
Did you have any interest in speaking?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for being here, Michael.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time.
Nice to see you. You too, dear.
Yeah, so we'll just take a, like a 5-minute recess.
I got a question. What? On this.
Oh, they have been looking at it. Mike is very upset.
What's
Just the,
they've paid in the last 9 years?
That's the,
like I said, it's got to come down.
They would have had. They say.
We're on the same page.
my time when I made that.
We're good.
All right, I think we've got everybody back in here. I see Mr. Bodie's making his way back right now. So I don't think it's been quite 5 minutes, but if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Okay. All right. All right, so we're back in order. We've got a motion on the table, motion and a second, and we are discussing. Is there anything that you, Mr. Wickman or Mr. Gatlin, that you'd like to share?
No, I think Mr. Wickman and I agree with procedurally how it needs to happen. I just want to emphasize, if the vote is tonight for us to get out of this contract, we still will be servicing them for the next 12 months.
oh, right.
And that's just something we both wanted to kind of clarify and confirm.
Let me clarify this too. Maybe I thought that what we were voting on was not extending the contract for 6 months.
That's correct.
That's right.
Okay, so if they decided between now and June 30th that they wanted to continue to hire Erlanger, they could still make that choice.
If they choose to pay us what we're worth.
Yeah.
What the contract is.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, the current renewal.
Yeah.
That's out there.
Is this the price that we're going to charge them for the coming 12 months?
It's on the second page, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so the last group of numbers, this next year would be 953,676. And then it would go up, I think is it 2% or 5%? 2%, yeah, a 2% increase each year.
Which is cheap. Pretty cheap. Well, while we're giving them 2%, we have to pay her overhead, what is it? 3 or 5%?
I'm sorry, I don't,
Just give least a 3% increase.
You see, why make it 2%
Yeah.
when
Why
we
do
have?
they get 2 and we have to pay 3?
The cost of that first year, okay, then it increases 2% each year after that. And that's total cost. That's just not salary. That's all of our operations and that's everything. And when we looked at the budget and look at the numbers going up, that's about what they've gone up, so it remains relatively the same.
Itself out.
Right. And in the contract, there are some terms that have been put in there that talk about any kind of extraordinary expenses we would have, like retirement or health care, some things like that. If there's extraordinary things kick in, other increases would kick in. That's just the basic numbers.
But the only thing I see here, though, you say 2%, and he cost us 3%. He gives us-
Not necessarily. You're saying, but you're looking at just the salaries.
That's right.
This incorporates a lot more than salaries. So what Mr. Fields is saying is that our increase is more like around the 2% overall.
That
Yes.
covers all of our stuff.
Mr. Cahill?
So, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, come to go to the microphone.
I know some of you here. I'll introduce myself. I'm Mike Doherty. I'm on Crescent Springs City Council, here to see what the issue is tonight, and how it transpires here. I just have one question. One, I do appreciate you taking the time and that to entertain this idea. There's been some negotiations in the past about redoing the pricing of the contract. Is that still on the table until the end of the month?
I would say yes.
Okay. I just want to be able to report back to make sure we're all on the same page on what's going on. I thank you for your time.
Yeah, just to clarify, so if Crescent Springs decided to renew before the end of this month, then the contract price going into the next year would be $953,676.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Mayor, that's the question I had. So right now, the cost for 16-17 was 1 million, right? So we are reducing that.
We are by about $115,000.
12%, we've reduced that with a 2% increase over time. So we would actually be reducing that cost too.
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually did that, at Crescent Springs' request. They asked us to take a closer look at the costs and stuff. And with the intent of trying to maintain them as a customer and to keep the contract, we pared down the cost
It
as
looks
much
like
as we
about
thought we
a
could.
12% decrease, and then we're looking at a 2% increase for the additional 5 years, which we were looking at 5% prior to that. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would like to clarify
I
something.
like you,
though.
Mike, but
We all do, but I would like to clarify something. If in fact, we don't do anything with this contract, the new pricing that goes in July 1 is on that existing contract that we have. So it's not the 900 and whatever number the mayor just quoted. It is the number in that original contract. Right. And at any time between now and the end of that, I'm sure we're open to that negotiation. At least I'm not speaking to look at it and to redo it at some point in time. I'm seeing nods back there, so yeah.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, how about we do a roll call vote?
Mr. Skidmore?
And the vote, just to clarify, the vote is not to extend the contract is a yes, correct?
You need to tell us what we're voting on.
Tell us which
Yeah,
way we're
okay.
going.
It's not to give the extra 6 months
Yeah,
that
thank
they're
you.
asking for the addendum.
Okay, yeah, all right.
On the addendum.
So a vote of yes would be to not extend?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
All right. Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Ms. Fetty?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely?
Here.
Present.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Kyle?
Yes.
Ms. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sugcamp?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, motion carried. All right, then the next item on the agenda is legislation regarding municipal order, the Meyer Bond ECC Building 1.
I don't know if Mr. Parsons wants to say anything about this briefly? Since this is your expertise, Jim?
Thank you, members of council and mayor and city staff. Again, we talked about this briefly at your last regular meeting when you had approved the inducement resolutions. These are the two bond resolutions now for the two issues of debt that the city will be issuing. These bonds are the private cost of the developer. The city is the conduit issuer only. And this, what we're doing here is the first one. The reason why there's such a difference between the two is the first bond issue is the maximum amount of $35 million. That's actually to pay for the building cost of one of the buildings plus the pro-rata cost of the improvements, infrastructure improvements as it relates to that first site. The second site, it's a lower amount, but that is just to pay for the prorated cost of land acquisition and some of the infrastructure costs. Later, we'll be coming back with another issue that when the second building is ready to finance. So just want to explain the differences there. Again, probably neither bond issue when we actually go to deal, this will be the full amount of the authorized amount. It'll probably be less than that. We usually authorize about 10% more than what we anticipate the actual bond amount will be. And again, this is for the Nyer project, and the individual names of the entities in the bond resolution are the names of what we anticipate will be the entities that have been created to be the tenant of those particular buildings. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead and read the first one. This is an order resolution of the City Council of the City of Erlanger, Kentucky, authorizing the issuance of up to $35 million maximum aggregate principal amount of taxable industrial building revenue bonds, Series 2017A, in order to assist ECC Building 1 LLC or assigns to finance the acquisition, construction, equipping of an industrial building facility located within the City of Erlanger, Kentucky, and to improve said facility, authorizing the issuance of additional bonds, providing for the pledge of revenues for the payment of said bonds, authorizing a lease agreement between the City of Erlanger, Kentucky and ECC Building 1 LLC, or assigns with respect to the facility, the agreement, authorizing a trust indenture appropriate for the protection and disposition of such revenues, and further to secure the payment of said bonds, authorizing a bond purchase agreement, and authorizing a home office payment agreement.
All right, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Fetty. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we've got another municipal order for ECC Building 2.
This is an order of the City Council of the City of Erlanger, Kentucky, authorizing the issuance of up to $7 million maximum aggregate principal amount taxable industrial building revenue bonds, Series 2017B, in order to assist ECC Building 2 LLC or assigns to finance the acquisition, construction, and equipping of an industrial building facility located within the City of Erlanger, Kentucky, and to improve said facility, authorizing the issuance of additional bonds, providing for the pledge of revenues for the payment of said bonds, authorizing a lease agreement between the City of Erlanger, Kentucky and ECC Building 2 LLC or assigns with respect to the facility. Again, the agreement, authorizing a trust indenture appropriate for the protection and disposition of such revenues, and further to secure the payment of said bonds, authorizing a bond purchase agreement, and authorizing a home office payment agreement.
All right, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Burke to adopt as read, second by Mr. Montgomery. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, with that,
Thank you very much, and we really appreciate the willingness of the council to move this forward in your special
Thank you.
meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Motion by Mr. Cahill, second by Mrs. Skidmore. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. All right, then we will open our City Council Committee meeting, June 20th, 2017. First item on the agenda under Public Works, Mr. Cahill, Mr.
Yeah, so
Skidmore.
we actually we put out for bid on Monday, 6/5 at 2 p.m. for bids for the City of Earl HVAC service contract. We did get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bids back at this time. We are looking at the lowest bid. There's 2 low bids, Air Force One, Peck Hanford and Briggs. Peck Hanford and Briggs did come out as the lowest bid. However, at this time, this is a newer company. We want to do some careful review of the bid proposal and also make sure that we check their reference for final review. At that time, we'll come back with a formal recommendation to the City Council.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom,
Yes.
who do we have now?
We have Air Force One, Air Force One, and they were the second lowest bid, so.
All right. Thank you. Then the next item on the agenda, under Codes, Building, and Zoning. Mr. Burke, Mr. Nicely, are you prepared to talk about this?
I've got the transient homes here that we discussed, I believe it was at the council meeting, wasn't it? Or not? Anyway, it's about where they want to be able to rent rooms for different people. And there's, is Rob here? Is here to talk a little bit about it,
Okay.
and we'll make our decisions on it. Come on up.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. So I sent out an email. I guess everybody has the basic concept of the Airbnb, right?
I don't know if I
Kind of
got
lost my
that.
voice at a kid's baseball tournament this weekend.
If you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself, or
Yeah.
state your name.
Rob Feldman.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rob.
So, you know, he brought up the renting rooms, which some of Airbnb is that. So basically, it's a website you go on to. I would explain it as almost if you were going to Florida and staying in a vacation home. You have everything there for you, furniture, towels, plates, everything that you need there. Some of it comes down to renting rooms. I don't think a lot of it is that. It's usually a whole house if, you know, several families are coming together rather than renting 3 hotel rooms. They would rather be under one roof, have everything that they need. So I actually have done this in Covington. I have 4 rentals there, and I turned one into an Airbnb, which at first I thought sounded a little crazy. Who's going to come to Covington and, you know, want to stay in my house? So I talked to several people that have done that, and there are a lot of people in Covington actually doing that. I've had great success with it over the first 3 months. I think the biggest benefit from talking, you know, to some people here, I guess there's a problem with landlords doing the bare minimum, code enforcement issues. I think this gives a lot of incentive for landlords to keep their properties nice. And the biggest reason for that is the review system with Airbnb. When you stay there, as soon as you leave, you get a review. The people that stay there review the host and say, yeah, you know, the place was nice. We had everything that we needed, or they could say, hey, the place was terrible and we would never stay there again, in which case, you know, a lot of people aren't going to stay there again. The same with the people coming in. You know, I guess one of the concerns would be, well, people are just coming in to party and have a good time. They're going to tear your house up and, you know, make the neighbors mad, which from what I've found is very far from the truth with this review system. When people stay there, you know, they have that incentive to keep the place nice, so you give them a good review, and if they want to stay in another one, you know, whether it be this city or another city, you know, there's that incentive there for them to keep the place nice and for you to give them a good review so they, you know, can rent another place. I mean, I broke down some numbers to kind of, you know, show some things. I don't know if there's specific questions about it that I'm not hitting on. I'm just kind of giving the basic overview of, you know, what it is.
What kind of background check you do?
Well, I think they have to provide a picture ID. I think Airbnb does some kind of background check. To be honest, I'm not real sure what they do, but I know that they have to give some form of ID so they can do some kind of checking on it, but I'm not real sure what that is.
They check both parties, whoever the house is? I mean, you know.
I don't think they check the host. I think they check the people coming in. Yes, sir?
What people are you renting to, occupying the
Well, so that's some of the numbers that I broke down because I think that is some of the concern. Well, people are just going to come in and party. So, and
I'm not talking about party.
yeah.
What type of people is coming?
Well, I don't know that I can speak for the type of people. I can tell you why they were coming in.
What are they doing? What are you furnishing them?
Well, so in 18 bookings in the first 3 months, 5 of them were here to see the Ark and the Creation Museum, staying in Latonia, because basically there's nothing between here and Williamstown right now that I'm aware of that they can stay in. So a lot of people are coming here to go to those 2 places, and I didn't realize what a big tourist attraction it was until I started this. After I made these numbers, some of my bookings in July and August and into September are very heavily for the Ark and the Creation Museum. Four of the 18 were here for work. 3 were here to visit family. 5 for Ark Creation Museum. 1 for a family vacation. 1 for a wedding. 1 for a concert. 1 for a birthday party. 1 for a bachelor party. 1 for an event in Cincinnati. On the bachelor party, the other thing is you have house rules. There's a list there. It's posted online. Everybody knows, you know, what the expectations are. Mine very clearly states, you know, if you're found to be here having a party or there's more people here than, you know, are supposed to be here, you'll be asked to leave, no refund. And in 3 months, I've had 0 issues with it. And obviously that's a small sample size, but, excuse me.
Who's going to be checking too many people or whatever?
Well, I think that's where the review system with Airbnb comes in because, you know, I'm not there monitoring them the whole time that they're there. You know, I leave them a key. Some people will meet them there. I don't meet everyone there because usually they say, yeah, I'll be here at 3 and they're coming from 6 hours away and I don't have all day to wait for them to, you know, get there and meet them. But I think the Airbnb system is the policing aspect of that because, you know, again, if they come in and tear my place up and I leave a bad review, they're never going to be able to stay in another place. The same for me as a host. You know, if the place is a mess, I don't have what they need there, they leave a bad review for me, I'm not going to have many people staying with me either. So I think there's a big incentive from both sides to keep the place nice. And back to the code enforcement issue, I think I know a lot of landlords in different cities, you know, in northern Kentucky, and I know a lot of them that do just, you know, they do the bare minimum. They say, well, why should I fix it up? Somebody else is going to come in and tear it up, and all my time and money was for nothing. I think with this system, it gives both people an incentive to keep it nice and to keep people coming back. And, you know, there's many other, I think, good aspects for the city. You know, we have more people coming to Erlanger if, you know, more tax dollars coming into Erlanger, more people seeing what Erlanger has. You know, we're close to the airport. It's a great location. You know, a lot of good to come out of it. Yes, ma'am.
We use Airbnb quite a bit, actually, and I totally get it. With the review system, for anybody that doesn't use it, the host reviews the people that stay there, but the people that stay there do not see what the host says until they do their review of the host. So that way, nobody knows what the other person is saying about each other until they both have come up and then they see. So if the host gives a bad review of the people staying there, it's a national thing, right? So all the Airbnbs are going to see that these were international. Yeah, because my husband stayed in an Airbnb over in Europe too. If they see that the host gave a bad review, people are not going to let them stay there because it's like a hotel or a bed and breakfast or something, but it's more reasonable. It really, I personally like them because it saves us money, and I've never had a bad experience in Airbnb.
Yeah.
So.
And I think around the United States and like you said, the world, I think they're very big in big cities. It's pretty new here. I had never heard of it until about 6 months ago, and maybe some other people have stayed in them or know about them. But, you know, like I said, I've had great success with it in the first 3 months and no issues so far.
So what you're telling me, these people are going to come and stay just a short time.
Yeah, and you can have a minimum amount of...
My neighbor's not going to be there long, so I don't have a neighbor, and I don't know who the neighbor is.
Right.
I'll pay higher taxes.
So what is the typical term of
So from my first 3 months, I broke down some numbers. The average night stay, and at the beginning, I just had a one-night minimum stay. I've since moved that to 2 because it's a lot of work to go down and clean up in between people and have it ready for one night. So I've moved it to 2, so these numbers are probably a little bit skewed, but it was about 2.83, so about three nights, and that was with a one-night minimum at the very beginning. So I would say it's 3 or 4. The average number of people that stayed with me in the first 3 months was just under 6, so about 6. And my average number of bookings for the first 3 months was 17. So, you know, it's not like it's just being rented, you know, this weekend. I mean, there's people coming and going, you know, and that was the first 3 months. July, I actually have $4,400 in bookings. I was renting the house out for $750 a month. The first month, I think I brought in $2,750. Second month, $2,950. This month is about $3,000, and July is about $4,400. So there's a lot of people doing this. And the other thing is, a lot of the people that are staying with me, you know, you kind of email or text, send messages back and forth to, you know, kind of set everything up. And a lot of these people are new to it. It's only going to get bigger. I mean, if it's not here, you know, now, it's going to be here very soon, and it's going to be everywhere very soon. So why not be one of the first ones to allow it and, you know, have the extra people coming here? Yes, ma'am.
So I presume that you buy homes in neighborhoods.
I haven't bought a rental property in several years, but I have 4 of them that I had purchased in the past 8 years in Latonia.
Okay, so how do you obtain these lodgings? Where do you plan on putting these, or where do you want to?
They're just single-family houses.
Yeah, so you're going to come into Erlanger and buy single-family houses in established neighborhoods and rent out. Is that correct?
I would like to, if given the opportunity, yes. I mean, I don't see the difference in me buying a single-family house and renting it out to a family for $900 a month, or doing it this way.
Well, no, I think it is the future. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But I live in a neighborhood. I've lived in my house for 48 years. And I'm 29, right? Good job, babe. I know that my elderly neighbors would be very suspicious of all the cars coming and going, and a stranger here and a stranger there. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I herald you for doing so well at it. But I would really like, I think we should put Corinne on the committee since she has used them.
David needs to talk, because
okay.
this is totally against our zoning. So there's some things that David needs to bring up that I think that we're not hearing from a staff standpoint.
Okay.
Before we get
the reason I brought this up and wanted the committee to bring it up to have this meeting was to discuss this thing, because we got and I didn't know this gentleman was coming, but the intention wasn't for me to talk about the pros or cons of Airbnb and that sort of thing. It was that ours is just ours was strictly a zoning issue, is what I'm speaking of. That is violating our zoning regulations, as the definition of what they're doing is for transient folks that's coming through, passing through town or whatever. That is the definition of a hotel or motel in our zoning regulations. So that they're not permitted in our neighborhoods, in our residential zones.
Okay.
They're permitted out here in the highway commercial zone.
Okay, gotcha.
We contacted some other cities, and particularly the Planning Commission, who does, pretty much everyone's cities other than Covington's zoning regulations are the same throughout the Kenton County. And ask them what they have been doing and talking about this, and they haven't been doing anything with the enforcement of it, as they just don't feel that, or not that they don't feel that it's an issue, but they weren't aware that there was that many going on. It came to our attention, a guy called and asked us what the zoning regulations were for these things, and we explained to him that you couldn't have them, and Mark Stewart got on the Airbnb thing and found that there's probably 3 or 4 of them in the city of Erlanger currently operating, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you tell us where those are? I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I know some of them, I don't know exact addresses. One of them's here on Commonwealth Avenue. But
Jessica's got them up.
well, see where this goes. And
Oh my God, that's French's house.
That would be an awesome.
Dan Francis.
Dan Francis have his house up on.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
God.
Was that
Oh.
Francis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe
My
that. Got it up on the
So,
computer.
yeah.
So the Airbnbs I've stayed
We need to rent it
at,
out for a party.
time in my life, I'm
they weren't,
speechless.
like,
Yeah.
it wasn't somebody that
Now we
bought
know we're
4
gonna have our
homes
next
and
party.
rented them out. These were
No
people.
doubt.
I kind of have a problem if you rent out 4 different homes that nobody lives in, because then that kind of is the gray area I don't like. But I like the ones, personally, I'm fine with the ones that they're currently living there and they rent out a room. Those are the Airbnbs that we've used. We've never used one where it's an empty house that just gets ripped out, kind of.
Yeah. Well, and again, my intention for this tonight wasn't to talk about the virtues of Airbnb, but just talk from a zoning standpoint that what we're having, and to find out what you all wanted to do. Since we know there's some in our city, we haven't gone out and forced them when we found them and said, you're in violation, stop it and desist. But I wanted to find out what you all as a council wanted to do first. If you wanted to take it to the next step, to fashion some sort of language in the zoning regulations that would allow them in residential zones or what. But, so.
I mean, if it's against our zoning, why haven't you?
Well, I wanted to find out what what I heard, some of you here were in favor of them, some of you weren't, and I wanted to find that out. If you wanted to go through the process, through the Planning Commission, to change the ordinance to allow these things under certain conditions. If you all say no, then we're going to enforce our zoning regulations.
I'm just astonished.
I could add a lot to that. When you get people in for a month or 2 months, they're gone. Landlord, they come in, they get bad people. Would you want to live next door and get some bad people? I rent mine out. You're.
And I understand that.
And when there's something that goes wrong with the people that I have, I've got neighbors and they come and I have to take care of it. But you get somebody here for a month or something, you can't control that.
Renee?
I had a couple comments. I would much rather have this Airbnb than I would this Cowie and Woodward property being turned into a halfway house, for lack of a better term. Remember when we were talking about doing Cowie and Woodward, we were talking
Well,
about.
that's going to be our next discussion, but there's
Okay.
that's not being turned into a halfway house.
Well, okay, Habitat for Humanity, where somebody has to stay there for a certain length of time, and they can trash the place if they want to, I guess. I don't know. I would rather have somebody coming in and spending. They're going to keep the house clean. They're going to keep the property up. Jessica's got some stuff on the on her computer there. The big white house down here on Commonwealth is on the list.
I know, and again, I'm not sitting here telling you that what's right or wrong. My thing is just telling you it doesn't fit our zoning regulations.
Well, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
It's wrong.
Current, that's right. If you want to change that, then you would have to say, change that, and go through that process like we do with text amendments.
Well, we've only got one good motel, I think, in the city of Erlanger.
We have none.
Oh, the pretty one up off the expressway's not?
Ms. Kyle?
I just have a comment, and I have no personal interest in this or against it or for, but in my neighborhood, I've lived there for 40-something years. I don't remember how many years, but it's in over 40. Most of the people in my neighborhood have lived there for a good length of time, and we just now have some new people moving in, younger ones. But it would be my opinion that my neighborhood would be like Patty's neighborhood. I don't think they would like it at all.
Well, he says
to
they're
have-
not coming in neighborhoods. He already said that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Well, what's everybody?
No, that's where these are, is in neighborhoods,
Yeah.
in residential zones.
They're not supposed to be.
No, that's.
Currently, the zoning regulations do not permit
So
them.
what do you all think? What do you want to do?
I think it's horrible. I think, no.
Tom?
You know, and I think going back to what we were deciding is, we look at this rental properties versus Airbnb. You know, being on the committee that I'm on for the revitalization, I'm always concerned about how we're dealing with these rental properties and landlords. You have somebody that has an investment in that property that's going to upkeep that property, that's not going to do the minimum, I think is a good thing. You know, Patty, I understand your concerns about, you know, the person, or no, it's Corinne, about not living there, but I think it's the maintenance of it and the accountability of it. We have a hard time just getting our registry completed. I mean, I don't know, we're not at 100%, right, Mr. Fields, on a registry for the rental properties?
You're right.
I bet you we would have, if we had these Airbnbs, we would have that contact information. So, you know, when we're looking at it from that standpoint,
A good point, Tom.
yeah, you know, Mr. Nicely is saying, like, who polices this? You know, I think, you know, Mr. Feldman would say that he would encourage the police to help him with bad residents, so, and the neighbors.
Yeah, I think that could be helpful. The only issue is that we're talking about introducing legislation, but we're not necessarily requiring someone to use Airbnb. You know,
Correct.
that's the only issue with it.
That's the issue. Group of.
Yeah, they may not use Airbnb.
Right.
You can't differentiate like that? You can't just say Airbnb? You have to?
No, I don't.
Boy, I don't think,
No.
I mean, you could certainly, no. I mean,
No.
Well, you could, no, you could, no.
Be sued.
yeah.
they find out that I'm a stockholder.
I mean, the best you can do is whatever Airbnb is doing that works, you could write that into the zoning laws, right? But certainly, Jack Gatlin could buy a bunch of houses, you know, next to any council member sitting here and just rent it out each night or do whatever, right? I mean, there's no requirement to go through. It seems like,
Am I going to be invited?
I don't know, but Mr. Francis is holding out on us,
Oh, I
isn't he?
could die. I could just die. That pond, never mind.
I mean, as an example, so PDS, as Dave said, did a great job of putting together a spreadsheet of communities throughout the nation that have regulated this. And I mean, I don't know whose task that was, but I mean, they have provided us, there's really like 6 cities in the nation that have regulated these: Duluth, Minnesota, New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Cleveland, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, and then Bellevue, Kentucky. And I think the Louisville ordinance probably makes the most sense, and what they have done is they have restricted it based on different types of residential zones. Now in Louisville, they have like 9 different residential zones. They also have limited the maximum stay to 29 days. And then they have this caveat that the number of persons cannot exceed 2 times the number of bedrooms plus 4. So if you had a 2-bedroom house, I guess 10 people would be the maximum. The other thing that Louisville does, which again, I'm not entirely up on what we have here in Kenton County. I presume we have a transient hotel tax in Kenton County?
I assume so. I don't know.
I know we did in Grant because I was on that tourism board. I think we have one in
I think it's a
Kenton County.
state, it's a state level tax.
But in Louisville, they assess that tax to these. So they're treating these like a hotel, and they're subjecting them to a 10% transient occupancy tax. And there's also basically a conditional use permit that is required, and then they're notifying the neighbors that would have the opportunity to show up at the Board of Adjustments to argue against this being located next to them. So that's how Louisville has dealt with this. Whether that's good or bad, those are the restrictions they've put in place.
Sure. Would you mind coming up to the microphone?
Thanks, Dave.
I live on Price Avenue, and we have a number of rental homes on our street. In fact, one, the neighbor actually owns a couple other pieces of property on the street and rents it out. And it really is a pain to see different people come in, and then, of course, in that case, they're renting at least for a year. But they have these neighbors come in and out, different people every time. You're not sure who you're going to have. I could see where I wouldn't want a house that's rented for 30 days on my street, and every 30 days or every 20 days or every 2 weeks, we got another set of people there. I live on a street with homes for a reason. You know, that there's a reason. I live there as opposed to living in a hotel situation. So I would not like it if my neighbors did that. No. It's a neighborhood.
I was just looking up the zoning.
Anybody else?
All right.
I just agree with what she said because you might be talking about somebody coming in for 3 or 4 nights and then it's constantly coming. And it's kind of nice to be in a neighborhood because you get to know the neighbors and the kids play with each other and it's, I don't know, it's just different. To me, that's like living in a commercial zone, you know, where you've got people coming and going all the time, so.
Mr. Feldman, did you want to say something else?
What's written in there that makes it not allowed now, so that it's a short term?
I can't hear him.
He can't
If you wouldn't mind coming up, he was asking, he said, what doesn't make, why is it not allowed now? Is it because it's a short-term rental? What is the term?
So David can.
Dave's on that.
Our zoning regulation defines, in the definitions of the zoning regulations, defines everything. It defines a single-family home as just that, for a family, whether they be related by blood or marriage or just a group of people living there. Then it defines a hotel motel as a residence or a room that is for transient or passing through guests. So it's in the definitions that what defines what a single-family home is and what a hotel motel is. And what I understood this gentleman to say and what the other fellow who called us and asked us what to do when we talked to him what it was, that's what it was. He says they stay a day or two, and that fits the definition of a hotel or motel.
I don't want to live next to a motel.
All right. We'll make a recommendation at the next council meeting.
All right. Did everybody hear that? Mr. Burke said you think you were going to, did you say that?
Want to have another meeting on it?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, unless anybody wants to discuss any further, we'll make a recommendation.
I think we should look at it further.
Okay.
They say?
They want to look at it further?
Okay.
So I see Jessica, Corrine, and Tom, and Don, and Kathy looking at it. You want to look at it further? Okay. And Renee, sorry.
So everybody, more or less, wants it. So we'll just set a committee meeting up
For August?
yeah, August or last.
Because we don't have a committee meeting, and, well, yeah.
Like that one at the end of July.
But I do think Mr. Feldman wanted to say something else, and then Dave went up and said something. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, that was his question.
All right.
So, I'm just curious. You don't live in Erlanger? I do live in Erlanger. You do live in Erlanger? So are you going to rent out your house, or are you going to buy other houses to do this with?
It would be much more beneficial to me to have them closer by instead of driving to Latonia to do it. When
Right.
people are staying here to go closer to, you know, where they're going from here than Latonia.
Right. So again, you know, when we're looking at this later on and thinking about this